must have been an angel by my side.
Welcome back. Thank you guys for joining us. I'm Christina.
I'm Sarah.
And we are back again to talk about some weekly astrology, some wine, and some subconscious beliefs and programming.
So we didn't cheers. Hold on, that didn't feel right.
Cheers.
Cheers. Stop your whining, but not for long, because we're also talking about names for our channel, like Cancer Rising Revolution.
Yeah, because we're both Cancers. We both have Cancer risings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we feel like it's a very nurturing energy, but we also want to, bring some maybe tougher topics and some stuff that we can discuss that's going to it might trigger people, but we're open for that discussion because we want to make this fun, but we also want to make it something where it's like more accessible to everybody.
Well, we're going to ease into it because we just started, so just like, dipping your toes in a cold plunge, which is what we just did
earlier today. So that's another thing that we could talk about for another time, about getting uncomfortable and how these things that we do that are uncomfortable actually allow us to grow. And with that being said, we're gonna go right into the subconscious today. Or are we gonna talk about the wine? What do we?
I think we should first start off with this really cool Tibetan bowl. I don't know how it's gonna sound on the video, but I think that if you're listening to this with headphones, I think you're gonna get an amazing massage in your ears.
So I guess that sets the tone. That's the intro.
This is us entering the portal.
Entering
right now.
The portal. I like that. Entering the revolution portal.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, with talking about the word revolution, that actually may trigger some people, right? I think when me and Sarah were talking about the title of our video, we wanted something that was a little bit standoutish, but we had used the word revolution when we were out to ask some people, and definitely people were taken aback.
They were like immediately like, oh, it was almost like jarring.
Yeah.
But it's not as if we're trying to create like a revolution so as to like, coming from a bad place or like, trigger people in that way. It's just the world we live in. I mean, it's no secret. There are tough topics and things that are triggering to people. But that's honestly part of the human experience. We can't live our entire lives without being triggered.
Right.
So there's always intention behind things that we do. So that's also something that you want to look at when it comes to triggers.
So let's talk about that for a second. I guess the word revolution, since we're on the topic, and since we're going to move into the subconscious mind today and the astrology that's going to tie in, the word revolution, what did it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean to you guys out there in the audience or in the YouTube world? Because it's perspective on everything. So when you hear the word revolution, I mean, I get excited. I feel like you're going to rise up and do something for the greater good. But in the past, it could mean revolting against something, right? Mm-hmm. And revolution can come with the term maybe war.
And think about it that way. See, if that's the meaning to you, and again, tying into the subconscious, why do you believe that? Why does it make you feel like it's having to do with war or not complying or not obeying? Because with what? And then that's where we get a little bit deeper. And okay, we have a special guest here who she actually
she's a revolution in herself.
Yep, she's like, no, I'm taking over. This is Nora.
She will probably be on like every show because she just loves to be here with us.
Yeah, if you haven't tuned in the last one, this is Nora. She's a Leo sun and Cancer moon.
Yes,
so
she is.
She, her Leo definitely overpowers her Cancer because she demands the room.
And you guys can't see, but we have Nixie actually. She's right down underneath our feet. She's an Aquarius with a Leo moon.
Yes, and then Aquarius, they're aloof, so that's why she's down there. You can't see her. She's social from a distance.
So it's interesting to see how even our dogs and their astrology signs can affect their personalities, right?
Mm-hmm. And how they interact with other people according to their placements.
So as we get off topic, because we can tend to do that, we get a little excited, and our Cancer risings like to go all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So coming back to that word revolution, I guess
it's all about perspective.
Yeah. And leading into perspective, we can kind of jump into a little bit. We wanted to talk today about what the subconscious mind is, because we brought that up on the last video, and people might not even know what the subconscious mind is. So going into that, maybe talking a little bit about what the subconscious mind is, I'm just going to give you a little brief background on, or some education on that. So the subconscious mind is where we hold all of our beliefs and programmings, and they usually start when we're in childhood, before the age of 10, but usually between the ages of 1 to 7. And our subconscious mind is actually considered like, if you're thinking about the head here, you have the conscious, the critical factor, and the subconscious mind. And most of the time, we are actually living in our subconscious mind and we're not even aware of it. Hi. And when we're living in our subconscious mind, we think of you have this programming where you grew up to not touch a hot stove, right? Because you would get burned, basically. Like, it was a programming that you saw, your parents said, no, don't do that. And actually, I even think when I was younger, we were making caramel and I didn't know. And this caramel went in my hand and burnt my hand. Well, forever now, I know not to stick my hand under anything.
So would you say subconscious is the same thing as unconscious?
I mean, in a way, right? Because a lot of things that we hold in our subconscious mind, we suppress them. So yes, they could be unconscious.
So depending on the level of depth and how far back there it is.
And based on trauma and stuff, right, too. So depending on what you went through. And again, trauma is a very, that's a whole nother subject you can go on, because what is traumatic to me could be different compared to what is traumatic to you.
And trauma doesn't always have to be this big traumatic incident that you went through. It could be something as small as the way someone looked at you for a split second when you were a child, or something maybe that happened while you were in your mother's womb.
Right.
It's really the impact of whatever the experience was. What imprint did it make on you emotionally is what I feel.
Right. No, and you're right, because when you're younger too, you feel things and you don't usually have the vocabulary to express how you're feeling. So to a kid, it could be, something so small could be super traumatic, like you're saying. It could, to a small child. And then, anyways, trauma, that we could have a whole nother video on it, but let's go back to the subconscious, so I'm not losing people here, because that, to know what that is first is really important, right? So your conscious mind, which we usually only use like 5% of, is in the front of your brain. Obviously, as people are more aware, don't quote me on that, because people that are more aware, they're obviously using a larger percentage, right?
Right, because they've built their capacity of awareness.
Right. Mm-hmm. So you have the conscious mind, your critical factor, and then your subconscious mind. And the reason most times people are not aware is actually not really their fault. Not to say that bad behavior is okay, but think about this. If your conscious mind, your critical factor, and your subconscious, at the end of the day, as human beings, we are primitive. So our first needs are safety and security. Think about an animal. Think about a dog. If you corner it, what is it going to do? It's going to attack you because its safety mechanisms come up.
So what would you say, I guess, to the people who really want to know what exactly is the critical factor? What place does it hold in your conscious mind?
Right. So the critical factor, anytime you try to access your subconscious mind in a daily basis, most of the reason people aren't aware is because your critical factor pops up like that dog backed into a corner and goes, no, we're not going back here. We need to first keep ourselves safe.
So would you say the critical factor is also another word for the ego?
In a sense, but it's a little bit, it can be. It depends, it's case by case. So your ego is separate, because think about it. Your ego might do things to keep you safe, but then some people's egos do things just because they're ruthless, right? So it's almost a little bit of a separate thing. The critical factor is more of your primitive fight, or think of it that way, your fight or flight. Mm-hmm. So if you're not safe, you can't even go back to the awareness of what's happening. Does that make sense?
So would you say the critical factor is more of basically the wall between what's, keeping you safe physically, like from a primitive animalistic standpoint here to survive physically?
Correct. Whereas
your ego is more of like the critical factor, so to speak, for emotional protection, for those deep emotional imprints that are back in our subconscious.
Yes. So that's a very good way to put it. the ego, I mean, again, we could have a whole nother video on the ego, right? Because that's a whole thing you could go down with empaths and ruthless people. But yeah, for the most part, that's why most people aren't even aware of their behavior, is because you can't, how can you be aware of something if you can't even access it? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
it's like just a program running in the background. So how does that all tie into limiting beliefs and programs?
So then what happens from there is when you're younger, right, and you're between the ages of 1 to 7, and you're moving through traumatic experiences, think about it. 1 to 7, and we even know this when me and you talk about chakras. Your basic chakras, our root is 1 to 7. So that's all your basic needs. Survival. Think about that. You're in a primitive, as a kid, you're scanning your environment and you want to make sure you're safe. So if something doesn't make you feel safe, you're going to suppress, right? Because that's your top priority. You don't know any different. So that's where you start to create these limiting beliefs.
And that's why you develop that part first.
Right. And limiting beliefs, I mean, it's usually the emotional response when you're younger, and then the limiting beliefs form between the ages of 8 to 14. Like, limiting beliefs are more of, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, where the emotion actually creates those. So I was scared, I was sad, and then you create the limiting belief. Yeah.
Super complex, but you explain it in a really, really digestible way. So how would you say you would upgrade those beliefs?
So that's the biggest thing I do is hypnotherapy. That's why I love it so much, is it's a way to access your subconscious mind. But another great way to do it is through astrology, right? Because astrology brings awareness and light to some of these areas in yourself. And then another great way is meditation, because it's really when you're in a theta state, a calm, relaxed state, that you're able to let the critical factor drop. And when you're able to let your critical factor relax, which means it needs to feel safe or feel heard.
Cars are not allowed to drive by around this household.
So when you don't feel safe to be seen or heard, I'm laughing because of Nora. She's in her childhood years, okay? She's in her primitive years of safety over here.
She's a young pup, fresh out the womb.
She's building her beliefs right now,
yes,
as we speak.
She's building her root chakra, her critical factor.
She's quite sassy. But yeah, so if you actually can get into a theta state, you feel safe, you feel relaxed, you feel more at peace, and then you're able to access your subconscious mind and reprogram beliefs. And this doesn't mean hypnosis is a wonderful way, but there's so many things like online now. You could do YouTubes or meditations, or even look at your chart and listen to astrology. That'll help reprogram your mind a little bit.
And when we talk, it reminds me of, just energy in general. Everything's energy. Even what we're talking about when we talk about the subconscious mind, and these are all just, in reality, if we really want to get deeper, these are all just constructs. And I know this might seem like a little bit of a stretch for me to say that it's like a man-made construct, because there's science and there's studies, and there's certain studies that have proven certain things that go on with our biological processes and neurological processes in the mind. But if you really think about it, how did we figure that out? We had to use logic and tools, tangible tools, and measurement to wrap our heads, our logical mind, around intangible things. So kind of went off on a little tangible tangent, but
But I like what you're saying about that, because how do you create a new belief? You have to have something tangible. You have to have a tool. So you were going right into the next place, which is, how do you reprogram that stuff?
I was going to say, it's like, it reminds me, so we're talking about energetics, because everything is energy at the end of the day. But because we live in such an infinite, multi-dimensional world, or in reality here on Earth, it's like, okay, how do we make sense of it? And we need to have some types of tools. We're not just all formless and just complete energy. I mean, although in reality we technically are, but we have to be able to navigate this human experience, and in order to do that we have to have tangible tools. And so that's why, if you watched our last episode, we talked about how, astrology is my favorite tool. Christina uses hypnosis and sound therapy as well, as our main areas of focus. But, we want to embrace all of the many healing modalities and infinite languages of the universe because, some are going to resonate with you, some are not. You want to obviously pick what resonates with you. But I guess really to tie all of this in and bring it back a little bit, how long would you say it takes to rewire a belief or a bad habit? Because usually habits, they're tied to beliefs.
Right. And so think about this. I can't take credit for this. I will give credit out to my father, who probably picked it up from someone else. So shout out to John Mafia, my dad.
And no, he's not in the mafia, or was he?
It's another topic. We're gonna have endless videos. But he used to say that repetition is the mother of all learning. I'm sure it's a quote somewhere, but he used to tell me that when we were younger. Repetition is the mother of all learning. And who's
just like practice makes perfect.
Right. So think about that. To create the beliefs we've created, we've been repetitively told something, or we had these situations that occurred to us and the pattern kept repeating. So how do you break a habit? Well, think about it. Those patterns that were created, they were created over years, right? And years is a long time. So to break a habit, they say it's usually 60 days. 30 to start, but 60 is, I'm going to say 60, because the longer you do something with small steps, the more the habit's going to stick, right? So
let's bring it back a little bit to make it a little bit more digestible. So we touched on the first step is awareness. You have to have awareness, because if you don't have awareness, you don't know what you don't know, so it's just going to keep playing in the background. So awareness is number one, and then number two is repetition. And I feel like with habits, it's like you can't just break a bad habit, or you can't just quit something. It's like you have to replace it with something, because there's neurons that are hardwired. So it's like if you can't just snip it, you're gonna go crazy, and you're gonna really. It's possible. People have done things and broke habits cold turkey, but you kind of set yourself up for failure, especially with the more difficult ones, right?
Right. And so to create a habit and to repeat it, and then also to not be afraid to fail at it. I think that is the biggest piece, is like people will start a habit, myself included. I'll start something, and most of the time you are going to fail at it in the beginning, because it's trying to create the neural pathways, like you said. So you have to give it time, and it's okay to fail. Failure is the best teacher. And if you just keep consistent, even if you show up every day and it doesn't happen, just keep showing up. Small little steps is what
this is huge, because a lot of us, especially if you have a lot of perfectionistic tendencies, can get kind of stuck in this all or nothing thinking, where it's like, okay, let's say I'm trying to stop this one bad habit, and I mess up for one day, and it's like, well, I messed up, so I guess I'm just gonna cave and just keep doing it now because I already messed up. That, you don't want to fall into that either, and you want to give yourself some grace of like, okay, yep, I did this, or I had this, piece of candy or whatever one time, then, I'm not gonna keep going and overindulge. Maybe I will start again tomorrow.
Right. And also, even what's nice is to give yourself a reward. Something, obviously, if your candy or sweets is your thing, right, you want to replace it with something that's more healthy, maybe a healthy alternative. But it's nice sometimes too if you could give yourself something for accomplishing small goals, right? You don't want to do big goals right away, but small goals, because that's going to keep the consistency.
So, okay, once you've got the awareness, you've replaced the limiting belief with something else, how do you stick with the new upgrade?
So that's where you would want to create some type of routine, like something that's practical, right? Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of big goals. Goals in general are hard. So what I would say is, first thing you want to ask yourself is, why do I want to change this? Why do I want to create this new habit? Why do I want to let go of the old habit or belief? And then once you figure out why you're doing it, then asking yourself, how is it going to make you feel once you create this new habit? How is it going to make you feel once you let go of this belief? Because people too are on different levels. So some people don't even know what they need to create a new habit, because they haven't explored that side of themselves yet. So if you're releasing a belief and that's where you're at for now, that's okay. But I would say to ask yourself, how am I going to feel once I let go of this belief or this habit? And then you can go a step further. What do I need, new habit, to allow this feeling to happen? So say, for example, I'll make it more understandable for people. Say, for example, I wanted to stop, let's just say drinking. Use that as an example. So I want to stop drinking because I'll feel like I can get more done during the day, or I can be more accomplished in my day, right? So the feeling is to feel more accomplished. But why? Why do I want to feel more accomplished? I want to feel more accomplished so that I have more energy. And you can kind of go from there, right? So why? What would energy allow me to feel? It would allow me to feel more power within myself.
So we want to focus on more of what we do want as opposed to what we don't want, because we do have this, just human nature, we have this tendency to lean more towards the pessimistic side. And this is actually a really good manifestation tool, and like law of attraction is focus more on what you do want. Because if you focus on what you don't want, you're basically saying to the universe, I don't have this. I don't want to feel like this. I'm in lack. Whereas if you're telling the universe, I want to feel this, I want to feel that, where your intention goes, energy flows.
Right, 100%. And that's not to say, for the people out there who don't know what they want yet, if you're having trouble figuring out what you do need or how you do want to feel, sometimes it is easier to go to the way you don't want to feel first.
But you have to know what you don't want in order to know what you do.
Yeah.
My thing is that you just don't want to, I guess, put emphasis there.
Right. So, but you want to
be able to... From a place of like suffering or, lack.
100%, because you're rewiring the neurons. So you want to be more like what you're saying in the feeling that's more positive. But it's okay if you look at what you don't want to get to what you do want, because a lot of people that are empathetic, that help other people, they tend to have a hard time knowing what they need. And I was one of those people. So I had to look at what I didn't want so I could understand what I did want, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
So
what would you say like the hurdles are during the process in rewiring a belief, or maybe what can people do to set themselves up for success?
So I would say that probably some of the hurdles that you're going to face, like I said, are the failure component. You might feel like, I wasn't able to accomplish that, right? Again, small steps. Don't let the failure discourage you to keep going, to keep getting up and doing it again. And I think some of the things that help with that are, one of the biggest things is like creating a gratitude list. And this goes back to what you said, Sarah. You said it, the positive, right? So sometimes it's hard to be in that place, but to focus on what you have right now or what you have in the moment, creating that list to help change the wiring of the brain.
Mm-hmm. And I would also add too, don't quit.
Yeah.
Because if you quit, then there you have it.
Well, and you'll never know, right? You'll never know what could be.
And have compassion for yourself as well through the entire process, because you're literally, it's not just, you're breaking habit, you're literally rewiring neurological processes in your brain.
Which means, yes, that limiting belief was created through repetition, but guess what else is also created through repetition? A good belief, a good habit, a good emotion. So that's what I would say.
And you're also increasing your capacity for discomfort. And this is also another good segue, because we were not meant to just be comfortable our whole lives. If we were comfortable our whole lives and we never had any habits to break or goals to achieve or challenges
or chaos to overcome,
life would be boring.
Isn't that the truth? Well, this chaos and all this stuff is a perfect way to segue into the new moon, don't you think? The new moon,
it really is
Gemini. So
yes, and so what we want to do is we want to work with the energy, because everything is energy. Energy is always in motion. I mean, if you're really, into physics and science, and you're, one of those people who like to have like that tangible proof or, science behind to justify things, even physics, metaphysics even tells us this. Okay, didn't Einstein, like with his theory of, I don't know if it's a theory of relativity or what, I don't know. That's not my realm. But all I know is these people, these forefathers in physics and metaphysics, they proved this, that energy cannot be destroyed.
Well, and they were pretty spiritual too. They were. It just wasn't talked about. And astrology was like one of the first things, wasn't it? The spiritual was what led people into science.
Yes, astrology is ancient science. It's an ancient tool. It's an art. I mean, there's astrologers, depending on the teacher too. Like there's astrologers that lean more towards just the science part of like, well, the moon is in Virgo and 25 degrees and a conjunct and a tight squared, and like that's the science piece of it. But then when you talk about the art and the energy of it, that's the part that you don't see on the chart. So I actually took a class from this astrologer. Her name is Annie Botticelli. And she says things that are on the chart and off the chart. Nice. Because it's also a tool that helps us gain self-awareness and who we are. Who did our soul come into this lifetime to be on Earth physically? And each of the planets, they have their own expressions, their own archetypes, and how they express and how they influence us. So, just for example, like we have the inner planets, we have, in astrology, we call the sun and the moon planets, although they're luminary bodies, but we have the sun, which represents our self-expression, our ego. The moon is our inner world, the self behind closed doors, our emotions, our primal instincts as well. Talking about subconscious, it represents subconscious as well, and memory. And then, Mercury is our thoughts. How do we process our thoughts? How do we think? How do we communicate and speak? How do we learn? And then, Venus, how do we express love? So and so forth. And then, the outer planets, they don't have as much of an influence that you can see very much as the inner planets, but they all have their place and they're all within us. But that's also another video I could talk about.
Right, but this goes back to what you were just saying. So there's science and spiritual or, magic in everything, right? And this is what we wanted to lead to, was basically how subconscious is really more, it is science-based. There is a total spiritual element because that is what I do, but the subconscious is more science-based. So I guess how does this subconscious that we're talking about now tie in with the astrology, which is going to give more of a spiritual standpoint, right? And this new moon that is in Gemini, because that is affecting some of these areas within the subconscious.
Yeah, so we just had a new moon in Gemini. I believe it was Saturday on the 17th. And this is actually a very subconscious lunation. Not only does the moon represent our subconscious and our inner world and our emotions, it's making an aspect to Neptune, which is the spiritual planet. It's the realms that are not here on Earth, the spiritual realms, the metaphysical realms, the world that we don't see but that we know is real and palpable. We can feel energy, right? And so even if you would not deem yourself as spiritual, I'm sure you can agree that you can feel energy, shifts of energy. Say you're out somewhere at a party and you're having a good time and someone spills something or someone gets angry or whatever the case may be, the music gets boring and then it gets fun. That's energy.
Yeah.
And so I want to first talk about, we have a new moon in Gemini. Gemini is a mutable sign, which means it's constantly changing because it's a transitionary sign in between spring and summer. It's right before summer. And it's an air energy, and air represents our mental body and our thoughts, the way we communicate, the way we learn. It's a very playful sign too. It's a social butterfly of the zodiac. It's very fun-loving. It's very charismatic. It's witty. It's like I said, it's ruled by Mercury, so it's very intellectual, logical sign as well. It has the ability to see things from a bird's eye view and a very objective view, the bigger picture, and kind of detaching from emotion in that sense. And so with new moons representing new beginnings, this is a new cycle, 2-week cycle, because we have, after every lunation, there's another lunation. So after the new moon, 2 weeks later, we have a full moon. Then 2 weeks later, we have a new moon. And then it dances between a new moon and a full moon. And so this is a 2-week unfoldment of bringing more of that energy. And now we live in a dual world, so it's higher expressions and lower expressions, meaning good and bad, although it's my belief that there's really nothing bad in the universe. Anything that's bad is just things that are uncomfortable, things that are challenging to push us for our higher good. I believe we live in a benevolent universe. And so
how is this new moon then in Gemini affecting the energy as the collective?
So it's affecting collective in an infinite number of ways, but some of the main themes would be heightened communication, more social media, more news, because Mercury brings news and learning and information. So it can be a time of, especially, depending on your placements, but it is a very restless energy, Gemini, because it's mutable, it's constantly moving. So, I would suggest being more mindful of your information intake, especially online and on social media and news. Create some boundaries, or be mindful of your boundaries around that and with yourself. That would be a good habit to break if you're one to scroll on social media. Starting a new beginning. What do you want to call in with this new moon? What kind of seeds do you want to plant? And, this is another thing, too, that astrologers don't really mention, is that we have an aspect. It's not as if, okay, the new moon happened today and then that's it.
Yeah.
It's with everything, with transits, it's an unfoldment. And energy, it can't be destroyed, right? It's always moving. So it's always a constant merging and unblending and just energies swirling around.
So what are we merging with right now? Because it feels a little chaotic. I'm going to say that.
Yes.
Even today, we noticed a lot of ambulance.
Yes, definitely.
Running around.
Mm-hmm. And the chaos, actually, a little bit comes from the Gemini, because, like I said, it is a very restless, nervous energy. It's always got to be stimulated and moving. But it's in a tight square with Neptune. So a square means it's making a frictional aspect. So the moon in the sky is communicating with Neptune in an aspect that's the planets, they're not able to, I guess, communicate in a very harmonious way, because, each planet has their own unique energy, right? So we have the mental energy of Mercury making an aspect to a metaphysical, spiritual, formless, boundaryless, blurry planet of Neptune. It's a planet of fantasy, illusion, deception, and its lower expressions. And its higher expressions, it's unconditional love, it's oneness, it's interconnectedness with the universe, source, God, or whatever you call it. And everyone here on this earth, because we're all one. We are all souls in a temporary human body. So we are all connected. We all came from the same creator on a higher level, of course. And so with this aspect, it can be a lot of confusion. So I would say, during this 2-week period, and this is actually kind of, Neptune is a challenging energy to work with, because it's like, okay, I'm here on Earth. I see that this is happening. This is real. This is happening here in my physical reality. But things are not what they seem, because Neptune is bringing a lot of blurriness here to our reality and our emotions and our thoughts, specifically our thoughts.
So in knowing it's really kind of hard to focus, right? And our thoughts kind of create a story. What could somebody do during this transit that would allow them to balance that better? Like, is there a way that what could they focus on maybe to balance it better?
I think that this is more of a lunation. So this actually sounds a little paradoxical, because Gemini is a social sign, mm-hmm. but because of the aspect it's making with Neptune, and Neptune rules Pisces, which it rules the 12th house also, which rules solitude. It rules distance. If you're into tarot, the Hermit. So it's really, to me, a time of kind of creating more stillness and solitude. It's really a time to lay low, because, if you're out there and you're restless, you're burning out, You're in the chaos. You're not going to
get bad.
yeah, because you're not going to really give yourself the opportunity to really know what's what.
Right.
And for those of you who have a lot of air placements, or someone who's very logical in their head a lot, or even up in the clouds a lot, you're not going to figure it out. You're not going to think your way out of this one. You're not going to figure it out because this is a transit that's coming through. But the blessings that it brings is that, when we have confusion in our life, what do we need? Clarity.
Right.
And with energy, it's always temporary. So confusion is an uncomfortable energy to be in, but if we just stick with it and we wait, when we have this full moon, because full moon is a time of culmination and revelation, it's literally the sun shining the light on the moon. That's why you can see it in the sky. That's when we're going to have some clarity come in.
Well, I heard that more of that clarity would be too, like in Cancer, because it's more of a nurturing type of energy.
So we will be in Cancer season. It is going to be a full moon in Capricorn, which is actually a really nice moon especially for Earth people, because it's very grounding. And Christine is actually a sun in Capricorn.
Yay, I need a grounding moon. I feel like with the air, I don't have any air in my chart, so it's just, I feel good. There's not too much, but like I do notice what you're saying. If you are out and about, it's like whether you attract it or not, the chaos is just there. So it is a really nice time to go inward. And I think that also, think about it when you're limiting beliefs, right? When you're processing limiting beliefs, you need to go inward, because otherwise we go to our thoughts. And when we're around other people, that's the other thing about being around other people. You know how your mom always said that your closest, 3 or 5 friends are the people that make you who you are? Well, some of that is the truth, because when you're in limiting beliefs and you're trying to rewire them, right? How easy is it going to be to rewire them if you're getting these stories from outer people who maybe aren't having the same perception? Mm-hmm. Not that their perception's bad, but they might not have the same perception that you do, and you're trying to create these habits or these rewirings in your beliefs. So I think this really actually ties in well with the subconscious stuff that we were just talking about, because it's important to go inward and to, like you said, get clarity, not listen to the outer chatter of the world. Doesn't mean that you can't have those friendships. They will be there, but this is a time to allow your body to talk to you more so, to listen to your body. And good ways to do that is to drop in, do a meditation, and ask your body, what is it feeling? Because your body will tell you. It really will.
And stick with it. Stick with the discomfort, and the clarity will come.
So we also have, you said something about Neptune. So Neptune squaring the new moon, that's the Neptune squaring Gemini, right? And then we have Pluto opposition to Venus. Let's talk a little bit about what is this?
Yes, so this was a major astrological transit that we recently had, where Pluto's retrograding in Capricorn right now. And that's a topic in and of itself. But I will briefly touch on this to explain this aspect that it made with Venus. So Capricorn opposes Cancer. And so when Pluto still is retrograding in Capricorn. Venus was in Cancer. It's in Leo now, and we'll talk about that. It's actually a great, fun transit that's going to bring a lot of healing to the collective. But when Pluto was opposing Venus in Cancer, it was causing a lot of friction with relationships, and collectively we're still feeling that. I actually, on the side, I do readings and guidance on Medium Chat, and every single person that came on there asked about relationships. What's going to happen with a relationship, or they're struggling in a relationship, or there was a breakup. Lots of breakups going on. And the reason this transit brings a lot of that, because Pluto represents our subconscious. Mm-hmm. It represents psychological intensity. It represents trauma as well. So it can bring a lot of painful and intense experiences. And Venus represents our relationships, how we love, how we express love, how we like to receive love and give love. And with Pluto making a frictional aspect where it's opposing, so it's creating a polarity of complete opposites with Venus, Pluto is pretty much ripping the rug from under our feet of all the things that we kept buried. See, she doesn't even like this energy. It's very challenging.
No, she's more of a
energy.
Venus in Leo. It's Just that's a more joyful placement for her.
And Venus in Leo is very bold, expressive in love, charismatic, fiery in love, fun. It likes excitement. And so, but with Pluto opposing Venus, it's really for our highest good. Pluto wants to bring all the things that are back in our subconscious that we've been accepting in our relationships that may keep causing arguments that have been reoccurring over and over. Yeah. Once and for all, it's like, okay, I've had it. This isn't working. We need to bring this up and heal it for good.
Well, and two, do you think, okay, because you're the astrologer, so when you talk about relationships, right? Like relationships with partners, but it could be relationships within your job, because all relationships as we evolve tend to become intimate relationships. And if we're in a place of more spirituality, don't even those relationships affect us because the people within our workspace maybe, or friendship relationships?
Yes. Depending how this is aspected in your chart, you could very well be that. I would say though more so on romantic relationships, because Venus is the planet of love, but absolutely your intimate relationships too, like with close friends and just close relationships that that does hold a lot of love in them. But
I guess because too, when I go back to the subconscious mind, I think about, partnerships are created from childhood, right? They're created from your mother and your father. So those patterns carry not only into the relationships you have intimately, which I really believe the only difference between intimate relationships is the partner you're with, you have sex with, and as you grow, your intimate relationships are friendships. So it's like even in your job, those patterns can be recreated through belief, is what I think.
Because we're mirrors. So everything you experience in this reality, the relationships that you experience in this reality are mirrors of, and on the topic of Venus, which is the planet of love, not just of others, but how do we love ourselves? And if you don't love yourselves, then you're going to attract mirrors that reflect that lack of love, which is, you can cause dysfunction and cause issues in your relationships. But Pluto is there to say, hey, you know what? You're either resisting, or maybe this is karmic, this is meant to happen and be lived out to learn certain lessons. But it's going to bring very painful, intense, jarring moments that if you're not, especially for those of you that are not doing the internet work, which I assume that you are if you're watching this video. But I mean, regardless of where you're at in your journey, Pluto does have that effect on us to bring up those intense psychological experiences and pressure to be able to make us release and get rid of what is not serving us, what continues to just keep showing up as disalignment in our lives.
Well, and like you said, it's not negative, because going back to loving ourselves, the only way to love yourself is to have these reflections and to start, it's actually a good thing. It goes back to the beliefs. You start to see the value of yourself, and then you want to rechange the beliefs, because if you don't even know that that's happening, or that's where the awareness actually comes. It's when you start to see these reflections, then you start to say, okay, I want to love myself more. So in loving yourself, that's like the negative actually becomes a positive, and you start to think, how do I change these beliefs? Worthy, deserving, good enough, whatever it is, So,
and it's literally no accident that you said the word value, because Venus also, not only is it the planet of love, but it is also the planet of value. It represents money, finances, resources, possessions, like our material possessions, like our home and our comfort, our safety, our stability. So value can be internal as well. Your self-worth and your resources and your possession, like we talked about mirrors, is literally a direct reflection of that. If you feel like you're worthy to have nice things, to have a nice home, to support you, take care of you, your home is going to reflect your level of value and self-worth.
Yeah. Okay, so let's what? Nora. Value. So we're going to go into, let's do this now. We're going to pull a card, but I want everyone out there I want you to take a second, and I want you to drop into your body. Let's do our little exercise, because I think this is a really good place perfect for limiting beliefs, right? Perfect for rewiring what your value is right at this moment and how you define that. Now, when you think about the word value, what does that mean to you, right? Because it can mean something different to everyone. So I want you just everyone to close their eyes. And I want you just to take a nice deep breath and to exhale. And I want you to think about right now in your life. Let's do this because it's easiest to think about what you value the most. Because it might not even be for yourself. What do you value the most? Is it money? Is it time? Is it love? There's no right or wrong answer. I want you to trust yourself. What comes up when you think about what you value most right now? And what is holding you back from fully allowing that value to show up in your life, that energy? And when you think about that, when you notice that, what do you need to allow yourself more of this value? What would it feel like? What would it look like? And maybe you don't know, that's okay. I want you just to start with that place of the value, what you value. And I want you just to keep that with you, maybe for this next week, maybe if you even have time to journal, come back to it, because our values can change too based on what we need. So it's not something that has to be, oh, I only value this. But when we do this exercise, it's like, what's the first thing that comes up? Because that is where we're placing our value right now. And the value that we're placing could also not be something that's good for us. It could be something that we value that's not good for us. It could be creating like a problem in our lives right now. Because if we value love from a place of lack or a place of needing to be loved, that's not a good value, right? We got Nora over here like growling. All right, let's shuffle a card.
Well, I actually,
you pulled
one flew out, and it's actually a beautiful card. It's Archangel Roquiel. Enter higher planetary service. Be a blazing light.
It's beautiful.
I feel like this is that Venus and Leo energy.
Well, and again, it goes back to valuing yourself. How do you want to show up in the world? How do you want to show that value to the world?
Leo is ruled by the sun, so it's all about shining, self-expression, and when it's in the planet Venus is how do we express our love with ourselves and with others, and how can we be courageous and bold and, not afraid to express how we truly feel.
As you said, that the other card that came out, assert your authentic needs. And it's like 2 children. So
Leo is actually rules the inner child. It's a very playful, childish sign.
And it's coming from the subconscious beliefs, the programmings that we've had that keep us from asserting our needs. So having more of that confidence. And again, that comes from us valuing ourselves.
And following our heart. Leo also rules the heart as well. How can we kind of rest our mind a little bit and step more into our body, into our heart, because our heart intelligence is actually more intelligent than our brain intelligence, and our body intelligence is more intelligent than our brains and logical intelligence.
Well, and the Nourish Your Body card came out.
And that's pretty intelligent because our brains are pretty intelligent.
Well, they've actually done a test where they hooked up the heart and the brain to a computer system, and they took like cards and they would hold the cards in front of the people, and before they even flipped the cards over, they noticed the heart was already picking up the feeling or the vision of the card before the brain could even catch up. So that tells you how important it is to listen to your body. So like if you're tired, to slow down, because those are parts of the limiting beliefs and the value of ourself. We're going to talk about our beautiful wine because we didn't get to do that yet, right?
Let's grab the bottle.
Take a pause.
So our wine of the week, and we are not sponsoring. This is not a paid sponsorship. This is just, we like to drink wine. Roma Doc, and there's a whole bunch of Italian wording here. It's a rosé. It's a very light rosé. It looks like liquid gold, if you ask me.
Is that what you're calling it?
Yeah. Cheers. And
I actually like this one better than last week. I will rate that a little bit. This one's I like a little drier, earthier. But again, I'm an earth sign, so it makes sense.
Yeah, it's lighter. Yeah, we're not.
What's
really
your feel on
sweets.
it? How do you feel?
I think it's very light. It's very crisp.
Yeah.
It's not like super warm. I just feel like it's just like something like, it's almost kind of it's a little watered down, I would say, but it's good. It tastes good.
It's definitely like more of a day drink, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
Like if you're by the pool, it's a nice drink. And it is nice though that it doesn't have any, like, it's very clean almost tasting.
Yes.
I'm not gonna use the word natural because remember we got the last time we said natural. It was
we triggered somebody
Yeah.
by saying natural or organic.
And I guess natural isn't real. It's just a marketing ploy. But whatever, it has like a little bit of a clean taste to it. So that's really nice. And I really like that. And then the fox, it relates very well to what we're talking about.
Yeah,
so what is the meaning of the fox?
The spiritual meaning of the fox is playfulness. But also it's cunning and sly. So foxes have a reputation to be cunning and sly because they're actually excellent hunters, that they trick their tracks so that their predators can't find them, and they steal other animals' holes that they've dug, like badgers and porcupines, and make it their own. And it's actually really synchronistic that we just so happen to be drawn to this wine because Gemini is the trickster of the zodiac. It can be deceptive and tricky because it's a very intellectual, witty sign, and it is very playful and curious, so it can kind of be tricky and deceitful in that way. I am not condoning to be a trickster or be deceitful, although it does have its place.
Well,
and
it's
I know
called
that could
it's
be
called the art of manipulation. Pacing and leading, NLP. You could do it with anything, but why are you manipulating?
The intention behind it at the end of the day.
Right. Why are you doing the manipulation? Like I always say, you can manipulate energy, but are you manipulating in a good way or are you manipulating in a bad way?
Right.
For
the greater
that's
good.
up to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll put that back on you.
That's you decide how you want to handle that. But yeah, I think.
So thank you so much for tuning in. And this was another great episode. And leave a comment below on, what topics would you like us to talk about? Any questions you have? Any name suggestions? Do you like the Cancer Revolution, or what did we say?
The Cancer Risings Revolution.
Cancer Risings Revolution. We really want to kind of exude like the personal side of it.
Because we're both Cancer Risings.
And I just will say that actually is quite sentimental, not only because it's Cancer, but because when you have the same rising sign as somebody, literally all the transits, the same areas of life, the same houses. So it's like you experience things together.
Yeah,
exactly.
Which is nice. And you can kind of have the same value in things and kind of look at things from that perspective, which again goes back to the way we view the world, which, everyone
very similar. We look through the same lens.
Right.
Your rising sign is also the glasses that you put on every day. And then the revolution part, coming from a good place, is that we want to talk about the things that people are not talking about. We have so much wisdom to share, but we feel like there's certain things that are not being shared.
And sometimes it might not feel that way for other people, right? It might feel a little triggering, and that's okay. I think that too, as Cancer Risings, we're more nurturing, and I think too we want to step out of that a little bit, and we still want to nurture, but we want to allow people to do it themselves, right? We want to hold them accountable for the things they're doing.
There's that Capricorn talking. Accountability.
Well, anyways, we thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you